Then the channels of the waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered. Three-quarters of the earth man calls his, hidden by a covering of water. This unknown and invisible had to be explored. In the early 19th century, America was a new outpost of civilization's center, but with a new spirit of vitality, born of the conquest of a wilderness and the daring to face the seas. Her people knew that if their country was to become strong, she must have her own source of knowledge and her own science. In 1830, the Navy established a central repository of knowledge about the oceans. It was called the Depot of Charts and Instruments. In 1838, the United States Exploring Expedition, under the command of Lieutenant Charles Wilkes, sailed from Chesapeake Bay southward along the coast of South America to Antarctica, along the coast of what is now known as Wilkes Land to Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, the northwest coast of North America, the islands of the Western Pacific, the Philippines, Singapore, the Cape of Good Hope, and finally home. The expedition sailed a total of 87,778 miles. The entire voyage lasted 4 years. One of the results of Wilkes's exploration of the Georges Bank eastward of Cape Cod was the first chart produced by the United States Navy. In 1842, Lieutenant Matthew Fontaine Maury became head of the Navy's Depot of Charts and Instruments. This was still the era of the sextant and chronometer for determination of position, the hand lead for depth soundings, tallow for obtaining bottom samples. Soon after his appointment, Maury began to study the ship's logs stored in the depot and to extract information about winds and currents from different seasons of the year over the world's oceans. He combined this information in a series of wind and current charts. Using these charts, shipmasters were able to save an average of 47 days in a 180-day voyage from New York to San Francisco. Soon, Maury had a worldwide network of sailor scientists who sent observations to Washington and participated in the results of their new knowledge. He extended the scope of this work and helped organize conferences leading to the free exchange of maritime information among nations. He established east and westbound lanes to reduce the danger of collision in the North Atlantic. He promoted the construction of the first astronomical observatory in the United States, the Naval Observatory in Washington, and served as its first superintendent. He recommended the route for the first submarine telegraphic cable across the Atlantic. He proposed that a bureau be established in Washington to predict the weather. Yet it was during this era that the marine surveyors provided the information essential for America to emerge as a major power on the sea. And during this time, Maury was developing the future of the new science, oceanography. Maury wrote, "Attempts to fathom the ocean both by sound and pressure have been made, but in blue water, every trial was only a failure repeated." The most ingenious and beautiful contrivances for deep-sea sounding were resorted to. By exploding charges of heavy powder in the deep sea when the winds were hushed and all was still. The echo, or reverberation from the bottom, might, it was held, be heard, and the depth determined from the rate at which sound travels through water. But though the explosion took place many feet below the surface, echo was silent, and no answer was received from the bottom. For the next 3/4 of a century, knowledge of the oceans was accumulated by survey ships of the Navy and by mariners and scientists all over the world. As time passed, the clipper ships and frigates gave way to steam-powered ships. Maritime safety became a matter of great national and international importance. After World War I, the airplane came to the aid of the hydrographer. Now, the relative locations of landmarks could be obtained rapidly and with accuracy. In 1922, a breakthrough occurred in the method of obtaining soundings of the ocean deeps. In that year, the principles reported by Maury were applied by the United States Navy in a new instrument, and echo was silent no longer. One Navy destroyer crossed the Atlantic at full speed with the new echo sounder and brought back a profile of the ocean bottom from Newport, Rhode Island to Gibraltar. Through the newly established International Hydrographic Bureau, founded in Monaco in 1921. The 1920s also saw an increase in the international exchange of information. This organization, based in part on Maury's pioneering efforts, would eventually number 40 nations among its members. As late as 1940, great areas of the oceans had never been explored. Others had not been resurveyed for over a century. When World War II began, the vital role of hydrography was demonstrated anew with each naval and amphibious operation. The thunderous barrage over the blue water. The assault against the enemy shore. Okinawa, Saipan, Leyte. Names now part of history. For many of these operations, information had to be gathered in advance, often under the guns of the enemy. Ships of the Hydrographic Office sailed with the fleet, producing charts from initial drawings to final press run aboard ship, ready for delivery to combat units in advance of operations. World War II documented the lack of precise information about the oceans and the land masses around them. With the use of electronics, of rocket propulsion and nuclear power, it also marked a new era of advanced technology in warfare. Now man was able to extend his grasp far above the Earth's atmosphere with space probes, satellites, and the ICBM. Encouraged by the government through the Federal Council for Science and Technology and its Interagency Committee on Oceanography, the study of the oceans is now one of the prime national efforts. Many educational institutions and private organizations are working with the Navy to hasten the progress of this endeavor. Responsibility for much of this activity is entrusted to the Office of Oceanography of the Navy, successor to the Naval Hydrographic Office and the direct descendant of the depot once headed by Wilkes and Maury. This office directs many of the Navy's global programs as expanding technology uncovers new problems and fresh opportunities. Once, the oceans were multi-thousand-mile barriers against a potential enemy. Now, they are secret pathways to our shores. The nation's oceanographic fleet is carrying out its observations and research around the clock, around the world. In addition, a worldwide network of trained volunteer observers, following in the tradition established by Maury, make and record daily reports on the state of the oceans. It is urgent to gather new facts in abundance from all the corners of the earth, a task so vast, man can hardly comprehend it. To obtain these facts, ships like the Silas Bent are equipped with completely integrated systems to gather vital synoptic oceanographic data, both when underway and when on station. It is necessary to develop constantly and avidly new instruments and to improve and multiply old ones. For the first time, the Navy can retrieve ocean data and immediately put this information to operational use. Oceanographers of the Navy are everywhere. They live 200 feet below the surface of the ocean for weeks at a time to find out what undersea conditions do to them. There are devices that can stand unattended in the deep sea and drift with the currents far below the surface. On remote platforms in the Atlantic, they study the effects of winds on the production of waves. They descend into the deep trenches of the Pacific, almost 6 miles straight down. Special ships provide a stable platform for delicate oceanographic electronic instruments. Other ships are designed to probe deeper and deeper into the oceans. we must increase our knowledge of the forces that cause changes in the weather, over and under the oceans. Ships are in the Antarctic observing the patterns of ice flow. Here in the oceans are the far-flung perimeters of defense, the testing grounds for new techniques. Now, too, man could extend his arm, his eye, and his brain far beneath the surface of the sea. The nuclear submarine and the Polaris missile. To search out foreign submarines, our sonar ranges out for great distances from listening posts. Is this echo from a submarine? Or is it from an underwater mountain peak? A school of fish? Has a cold current or a layer of marine life deflected the beam to make the target, which actually lies here, appear to lie here? For defense purposes, the Navy must learn more about these cold currents, about the salinity of the water, and about the layers of marine life. Charts continue to be a major responsibility of the Oceanographic Office. It is through the efforts of cartographers that much of the information coming to Washington takes its final form. Aerial photographs are restored to 3 dimensions in this machine, so that contours of mountain ranges and other important land detail can be charted accurately and quickly. Artists draw in the mountain ranges that will serve as distant landmarks to mariners at sea. Giant cameras reproduce the minute details essential for precise navigation. Among the millions of charts distributed each year are the notices to mariners, aeronautical charts for naval aviation, the sailing directions, and light lists. These safeguard the fleet and the merchant marine and protect shipping and lives on sea lanes the world around. While hydrographers are charting land areas, oceanographers are analyzing information to solve other problems. Weather under the seas is also being predicted. Daily readings come to the Oceanographic Office from hundreds of measuring stations at sea. For example, one group of Navy oceanographers can predict the height and direction of waves in different areas of the oceans for the next 5 days. Passenger vessels are given the route that provides the smoothest crossing. Freighters make a faster crossing by avoiding heavy head seas. Ships with deck cargo incur less damage when beam seas are avoided. Using this system, the Navy saves an average of 12 hours per Atlantic crossing on its military sea transport ships, saving dollars in ship operating costs and providing smoother crossings for passengers and cargo. In the Maritime Safety Division, Former ship's officers receive and relay information to safeguard the sea routes. A light extinguished in an important harbor, a derelict sighted on a main shipping route, are reported in the twice-daily radio broadcast to all ships on the high seas. All of the information gathered around the world comes directly to the high-speed computers in Washington. Computers speed up the gathering and evaluating of information. The results are flashed to the fleet to aid in the tactics of the submarine and the submarine hunter. In addition, all known information vital to maritime safety is included in the weekly Notice to Mariners. A ship is not considered seaworthy if she starts a voyage without the latest notice aboard. Oceanographers and hydrographers use processed information to speed up evaluation. Ocean depths and navigational lattices are indicated on chart manuscripts automatically. A computer tape directs this device, which scribes precision markings. Will this new knowledge change drastically the ships and vessels of tomorrow? Already the hydrofoil is under development. Of definite promise is the hovercraft, which can cruise over land or sea at speeds of 100 miles per hour. They may well be the ships of tomorrow, and they will bring new problems of navigation and safety. The skimmer, too, may become an exciting addition to the waterways. What capacities of the oceans will men use to develop weapons and weapon systems for tomorrow? The deep pool in this tower makes it possible to test the functioning of many oceanographic instruments right here in Washington. The chemists analyze and measure dissolved silicate in ocean water. Silicate determination can be an indirect index of the biological activity in an ocean area. The biology group examines plankton to obtain new information on scattering layers, bioluminescence, and the reliability of various species as indication of water mass movement. In the geological laboratory, Navy scientists analyze the sea floor to determine the mass physical properties of submarine sediments and to relate these parameters to the various marine environments. This is a miniaturized device that embodies the latest concepts in electronics and is designed to withstand the environmental extremes of the deepest oceans. In this testing unit, its capacity to hold up under great stresses is measured in the laboratory. Time-consuming trips out in the ocean are thereby eliminated. The vast programs of research to solve problems of defense have an urgency which is self-evident. The potential benefit of this research to the national economy and to the well-being of all peoples is just beginning to excite the imagination of man. The land cries out for water, for our farms, for our cities, while tons of water pound on the nearby shore. This plant is already converting salt water to fresh water. The byproducts of this process contain raw materials of almost every element needed by man. Our industries search for raw materials, yet the oceans have these too in greater quantities than can be found in the land. Here is an operation that is gathering magnesium from the sea and is able to market the product at a competitive price. Below the surface of the oceans, there is food in abundance. There could be more, but man must make it so. Today, man catches fish as a hunter. Tomorrow, he will farm the seas instead. Since time beyond recall, the oceans have inspired myths and confronted man with a myriad of mysteries. The United States Naval Oceanographic Office has an old involvement with the sea, with the safety of ships and of men, with maintaining the nation's strength. It is a task that extends from the days of Wilkes and Maury to the scientists of today. The time is now to recognize the elemental force locked up in those oceans as a giver of life, of food, of medicines, and of material necessities. That old and ever new involvement with the sea is Mission Oceanography.